You won't believe just where we're at today. We are in one of Jacksonville's most desirable communities that people are constantly wanting to move to or live in when they are here in Jacksonville. So in this video, we're going to break down just what this community has to offer as far as the different homes that you can find here, as well as the beautiful amenities and the commercial development that's happening as we speak. So let's get right into it and go over the E-Town community. All right, so as we talk through what it's like to live in E-Town, if you have any questions, feel free to call me, text me, or email me. It's going to be on the screen along with the video of E-Town. But ultimately, just know I'm always here to help answer any questions you may have about the area, the builders who built in here, as well as what's to come here in E-Town, or really anything else here in Jacksonville, Florida. But I get the question all the time, why is E-Town the place to move to? And also, people tend to always come to me and say, Justin, like, what about E-Town? I hear all about E-Town, like things like that's the place to go. And for a lot of reasons, it is. One of the things about E-Town that makes it so attractive to people is the fact that it is very centrally located to most things that you're going to do here in Jacksonville, as it is located here in the Jacksonville South Side. It's located right off of I-295 or 9B, depending on what you call it and what you're used to calling it. But it's very easily located to be able to get on I-95 if you need to go north or south, as well as taking it up to Butler Boulevard to go east or west. And again, I-95 will eventually take you to I-10 as well to go out further west if you need to. But overall, it's a very modern area. One thing you're going to notice as we're going through this with the driving footage as well as the aerial is a lot of these homes have a very modern feel, almost California-esque compared to what you normally see here in Jacksonville. Here in Jacksonville, because of the fact that we are a coastal city here, we tend to see a lot of times builders will tend to err on the side of more of a coastal farmhouse kind of living when it comes to the exterior features of a home, as well as the interior features. But with E-Town, they really broke the mold and really gave a very distinct look with those homes. So it is something that definitely does differentiate it, and it is what I think leads a lot of people to liking it because it's just so different than what we're used to having here. Now, E-Town as a community as a whole is roughly 1,500 acres, and about half of that has been kept or is going to be kept as preserve. And this development is another one of the Park Group's master plan community developments. Now, if you haven't heard of the Park Group, they are the developer of Nocatee, Florida, which is just to the south of E-Town. And Nocatee, Florida is well known here in the state of Florida as one of the top neighborhoods to move to or communities to move to here in Florida. And so E-Town, kind of continues some of those similar trends that made Nocatee so popular, but create more of a modern twist on it. The Park Group's also well known for Pablo Creek Reserve, which is a gated high-end community as well. And they also have another brand new community called Everrange, which will eventually connect to E-Town, coming up soon. So you're gonna hear more about us talk about Everrange in future videos as we go into 2026 and beyond. But as far as E-Town, that kind of gives us a quick synopsis of just what it is. Again, location is very desirable. The condition of the homes, because they're newer homes, are very desirable. And the price points, they do range, which is why people do tend to like it. If you need more of a smaller first-time homebuyer house, they do have those, or townhouses that are going to be at a much more desirable price point. But then they do have homes that do go up to million and a half range as well, with 80-foot wide lots for more of your estate-style homes for the area. So again, just overall a lot of different options there. Now the builders in there, let's get into that right now. For the builders, there's really been 5 distinct builders, technically I guess 6, depending on how you look at it, here in E-Town. And those are gonna be ICI Homes, David Weekley Homes, Providence Homes, Toll Brothers Homes, and Del Webb, which is more of a Pulte Homes or Pulte Group development. Now, Del Webb is going to be your 55 and up community, and that's a very niche community. Obviously, as the name implies, you have to be 55 and up. But what's really cool about the Del Webb community is you get your own amenity center separate from the amenities center, which is called Recharge here in E-Town. So again, if you are watching this video and you are looking for more of a retirement home, or just, you may be older and you just want to be in more of a development where, it's a lot of people in similar ages as you, that is a great place to consider. And I've helped people buy and sell in not just Del Webb E-Town, but also other Del Webb communities as well here in Northeast Florida. So again, if you have any questions about these 55 communities and which one may make the most sense for you, because there are a handful of them, you just got to reach out to me with a call, a text, or an email. Again, it'll all be on the screen. But when it comes to the builders, because we have multiple builders in here, what I like about that is it creates some diversity, so to speak, in the different looks, different architecture designs of the homes. Now, again, they all had to keep that modern feel because that was, what makes E-Town E-Town, but they really do find ways to differentiate themselves. And because they have different kinds of floor plans, it does allow you as a consumer, when you're looking for a home, to have different options to choose from. Because what I do find is people, sometimes they do like ways that certain builders build their houses over other builders. And so it's not to say one builder is better than the other. Obviously we all have our own bias with that, but in general, every builder does things a little bit differently. So finding one that kind of coincides with what you gravitate towards is a big piece of the puzzle when you are finding, a house to, buy and live in, here in not just E-Town, but Jacksonville as a whole. So overall, those builders, for the most part, they are done with construction. David Weekley does still have some construction left, they in their Kettering community, specifically their townhouses and villas. But in general, Kettering is one of the few that are left. And at the end of the day, when it comes to the amount of homes here in E-Town, we have roughly 1,400 homes across the board. So it is a big community. Again, it's a master plan community. It has those pesky community development districts, or CDD fees for short. But overall, by keeping it to only 1,400 with smaller neighborhoods nestled in between, again, you have Kettering, you have Marconi, you have Edison, you have Noble, just to name a handful. It definitely does give you still privacy and separation, despite being in a very large master plan community feel. In addition, pretty much almost every community here in E-Town is gated. Now, it's not guard gated. It is just a more of a coded gate for most of these neighborhoods, but that does give you added security and just privacy across the board when living here in E-Town. So that's something that I think is a very cool dynamic that we don't see in most other communities when we're talking about the master plan variety, such as Silverleaf, Shearwater, Rivertown, and of course, Nocatee. Now, getting back to the amenities, obviously, as mentioned, Del Webb E-Town has its own amenities center, which is beautiful, but you also do get an amenities center when you live in E-Town for all E-Town residents, and that is their recharge center. So again, their whole emphasis with this community is more of a relaxed nature, and the recharge center is a place where you can go to utilize the pools, the playgrounds, the dog park. They also have a fitness center in the recharge center, as well as a rooftop patio, which, to be quite honest, if it was me, I would probably spend a lot of time there on these beautiful days out that we have here in Jacksonville, because it's such a nice, quaint feel there. You do get some road noise as it is right up against E-Town Parkway, but overall it's not too bad. And in general, it makes for a great place to be able to do some work or just, again, recharge. But overall, the amenities that they have here is very well done. Across the board, it's very walkable for most neighborhoods. And because of how the neighborhood or the community was developed, it's really meant to have a golf cart, to be able to use to get to different places, such as the recharge center. So you are going to see golf cart parking, throughout the recharge center, as well as around some of the commercial developments that we will get to in just a moment. But it does provide a lot for its residents. So that is something that, again, is something you would expect to see with any community or neighborhood you move to. But they really did a great job with this one, including with the pool. It does have the lap pool, but it's a zero entry pool too, which just means that you can just walk right in. You don't have to deal with any sort of steps or anything like that. So very friendly, whether if you're young or you're old, to be able to utilize them on a day-to-day basis. One thing I would say that I would like to see that they don't have are pickleball or tennis courts. But at the same time, because of the fact that the amenities are there already, there's always a possibility that they will add more down the road to it if enough of the homeowners, want that in the future, as it goes from being in the developer's hands to then being into the HOA's hands. So that is another piece of it as well. But as we were talking about commercial, let's now talk about what commercial items are there currently, as well as what's expected. And so starting off with that, right now the big anchor store here in E-Town is Publix. If you're watching this and you live in the Southeast United States, or specifically in Florida, you probably already know what Publix is. If you are not familiar with what Publix is the grocery chain here in Florida that people tend to go to because of the customer service you get there, and the fact that even though they are a very large company at this point, you still get that down-to-earth feel that you would expect to have from more of your traditional local grocery stores. So Publix, is that place that people tend to always go to for groceries. We do have obviously other places like Target, Walmart, Aldi, Whole Foods, Fresh Market, Winn-Dixie, just to name a handful. But Publix tends to be the go-to place when it comes to grocery shopping. So that's gonna be your anchor here in E-Town. Obviously, we're gonna have some additional restaurants. You're gonna see that on this video as well. Some additional other commercial with it as well. And another big piece that's starting to be brought into E-Town is additional medical facilities to really make it more of a focus there. So that way, there's not a need to have to necessarily leave E-Town to get access to anything you would need on a day-to-day basis. Now again, if you do need to leave, you're less than 10 minutes away from the St. John's Town Center, which is really the hub for commercial here in Jacksonville, Florida. But again, they're constantly adding more here as well, such as what's still in the works, still being planned on, but they're also adding in E-Town right off of I-25. They're projected to add a water park specifically geared for surfing, which would make it one of the few out of a handful in the whole United States. And that's in that the residents here in E-Town and in Jacksonville as a whole, in general, are very excited to see that happen. So that's a big thing to check and see and keep an eye on to see how it progresses. But overall, it's a very much an exciting thing for people who currently live here. In addition, we also do have multiple apartment complexes here, very high-end apartment complexes, to where if you need to stay somewhere for a shorter period of time, maybe a year or so, to learn the area, it really is another great location to pick because of how ease of commute it is to get anywhere from E-Town. So that really dives into really what makes E-Town so amazing and so popular for people locally, but also for people who come here from other states, other countries. And that is why it is always a topic of discussion whenever I'm talking to someone who's thinking about moving and living here in Jacksonville. Now, it's not all good. Obviously any neighborhood's gonna have its pros and cons. Any community's gonna have its pros and cons. And one of the things that with E-Town, the amenity center could obviously be a little bit bigger. That is always, with any community, you'd always wanna have more amenities, more attraction. But that is something that I've heard before from past residents, is that they had wished to have a bigger amenity center. In addition, it is located in Duval County. So you are gonna have Duval County schools, which are not bad, but they don't have the same general rating when you're using websites like Great Schools as you'll find in St. John's County to the south, Nassau County to the north, or Clay County out to the west. So that is something to take into account, is that if you're moving here for the schools, E-Town may not be the community for you if you're looking more the public school route, if school rating is very important to you. Now, as far as the schools that are currently zoned for E-Town, again, these can always change, but right now you have Mandarin Oaks Elementary, you have Twin Lakes Academy for middle school, and you have Atlantic Coast High School for the high school, which I am actually a alumni of Atlantic Coast myself. So, just to kind of give some perspective, little peek behind the hood as you will. But overall, that is one thing that, if schools are important, we do see sometimes residents will choose to send their kids to private school or look in other counties like St. John's for the schools. And then lastly, because there is a CDD fee or community development district fee here in E-Town, that combined with the Duval County tax bracket, which is the highest of the 4 main counties that I like to consider Jacksonville, it does kind of put a little bit more of an emphasis on the fees in general for when you're living in a neighborhood. So to have that CUD fee and the higher taxes, I do tend to sometimes see people move towards other neighborhoods or communities to get in a situation where maybe they have lower taxes with a CUD fee or no CUD fee, but the Duval County tax rate, millage rate. So something to definitely consider. And again, if any of this is confusing to you, or if any of this makes you want to learn more, or go over what else is out there, do not hesitate. Call me, text me, email me. My information is going to be on the screen, as I mentioned a couple times before. And again, don't forget to, if you've seen all this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, so that way it helps us build it up to provide more and more content for you as you are living in, moving to, or thinking about living in and moving to Jacksonville, Florida. So with that being said, I'll see you guys again in our next video.